Welcome, 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 founders to the party. You're here back at the Elevate podcast where we work very hard to lift founders up to the next level. Today, we got an awesome topic. We're going to dive into everything content and content marketing. So hold on to your hats, get something to write with, and make sure if you have any questions about content or content marketing, drop them in the chat below. We definitely want to make this more of a conversation than just a three-way chat, which I love either way, but it would be awesome if you guys could participate a bit more. And stay tuned to next week. Next week, we're actually going to dive into some goal setting as we're coming up to the end of the year here. So if you're a founder thinking about like, how do I even set goals for 2025? You're going to want to stay tuned for next week. But this week, let's get into it. Of course, I got my beautiful and wonderful and amazing co-host with me. I've got Neil Fairmont. I've got Mr. Simon Severino. Neil, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm awesome, man. You sound like a champ with that awesome setup. And Simon, what's going on with you today, man? How are you?
I'm excited. I'm building the first app in my life. So many things will go wrong this week, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm building in public. I'm involving the community into this. Everybody will learn. We fail,
What is
we
the app?
learn, we win.
What's the app going to do?
You know, we will cover this. The question that Neil Fairmont brought up in the 200K Club was, where is the one place where people can ask you a question? And I had no good answer because I had 7 answers. Like, they can ask me on LinkedIn, they can ask me on YouTube, they can ask me on X. And so 7 answers is not an answer. And so I went out of that meeting with the clear intention to have one place where all the content is and one place where people can ask me questions if they are not a client. And the solution seems to be an app.
Cool. That's really exciting. So you're building like a community app. What's the baseline tech that you're using?
Kajabi.
Oh, sick. Yeah, that'll be cool to see, man. Congratulations. I'm pumped for you. I think that'll be fun, man. Yeah, and building in public's a whole nother one too. So, awesome. Neil, do you have any big wins you want to share from this last week?
I actually got a new client last week, which was great.
Let's talk about it. How'd you do it?
Nice. It was actually a referral from another client that I've been working with as well, who liked my stuff so much. She got talking to her colleague who's in a similar business and said, "Do you know anybody who?" Well, first off, she said, "I really like how your videos are produced and your workshops. What are you using and who's doing that for you?" And so, "Well, I have a remote producer and it's Neil and he's using something called Ecamm." And yeah, it was a referral. So it's fantastic. So I had my first sort of session with her this week. Sorry, it was great. So yeah.
Congratulations. I think referral trees are one of the best ones, right? Like the golden formula for any business is if you can get 1.1 referrals from all your customers, your business will grow infinitely. It's an easy number to think about. But today we're diving into content marketing, everything content. So excited about this. Let's kick it off like we always do. I got 5 zinger questions that I'm going to throw at these gentlemen. Okay. And then we got a little bonus lightning round. So number 1, coming right at Simon Severino, what are the biggest mistakes founders make when creating content and how can we fix them?
Mistake number 1 is spray and pray, creating content without measuring if it lands. So, for example, LinkedIn. We want our clients to post frequently on LinkedIn. They do it for a few weeks, then they give up. And I ask them why, and they say, well, because I don't know if it lands. I don't see any results, and then they stop. For these cases, we have been looking out for software, and we have found some software that gives you that analytics. So I'm looking, for example, on a weekly basis on my LinkedIn results, and it's telling me, Simon, these 3 are the best ones, and so I can click, create variations, reuse them. They become evergreen. But before I had that, I was spraying and praying like everybody, right? Just shooting in the dark and waiting for something. So that's mistake number 1, not having that feedback loop back, what is actually working, so that it becomes a system.
I love that. Yeah. And Neil, what would you say is the biggest mistake or mistakes that founders make when creating content and how to fix them?
There's a few. So I think one of the ones that I think a lot of us are guilty of is inconsistency. So just publishing content sporadically and abandoning it too soon. You have to be in it for the long haul when it comes to sort of publishing content online. You're not going to do 3 or 4 social posts and get a ton of references and new customers from that. So you've got to be consistent with the content, whether it be posting, emailing, whatever kind of content. We'll talk about what different types later. But I think inconsistency for me is one of the biggest ones. And then I guess I'll throw another one in there, is focusing on selling instead of providing value. So just constantly pushing, this is what I'm doing. This is my promotion. I'm trying to sell you something all the time. You should be really giving them some snippets of valuable content that'll address the audience's needs, answer some questions, address their pain points, and then potentially drive some customers towards your content instead of pushing them away with this constant selling with your content marketing.
I love great answers. Great answers. So what I've heard so far today is inconsistency is the number one biggest mistake that founders make. We have to commit, right? Why are we creating content? Yes, we're creating content to build something. Yes, we're creating content to get clients, but we're also sharing our expertise. So if you don't love sharing your expertise, then content creation is going to be pretty hard for you, right? So inconsistency is a thing, right? Set yourself a target with some outcomes. Second one's lack of strategy. When you start building this content, and I guess you guys both kind of mentioned this, Simon hit on it a little bit more, but the lack of strategy idea is like, you're building content to what end? What are you trying to get from the content? And if you can set up a strategy, then you can actually measure it, right? Next one, I don't know if we talked about this, is poor targeting, right? If we're making content for the wrong audience, we're not going to get very many clients. So it does make a little bit of sense to think through, like, what are the biggest challenges? You can use tech like GPT and AI to actually come up with, hey, who should I be targeting? The AI is a really good tool to help you to find your ICP if you don't have one, right? You can ask it a bunch of questions. Just get in there and be like, hey, I'm this person. I have this expertise. Who should I target? Who are the top 10 competitors in this space? Who do they target? Why do they target that way? If you start asking GPT those types of questions, it's going to start kicking out some very, very targeted stuff for you. And the last one I think that most people miss is getting actionable tips to improve, right? So when you build content, you're building it to the best of your ability and knowledge because that's what you've learned and that's how you know it. But if you don't have somebody that's done more or better or bigger things in the content space reviewing and helping you, like a coach, then you want to look to someone like Neil, or you want to look to someone like Simon, or even me, so that we can make sure that your content is kind of in the right place. There's a lot of communities that will check and double check your content. I know it's annoying to have to like go ask people for feedback, but that feedback's the stuff that's going to make your content sharp, and it's going to help you to convert. Had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman. He was saying, oh yeah, I'm going on this big short form content marketing spree in Q1. And what he was focused on was he looked at all of the content that he had produced over this past like year. And then what he did is he said, okay, I sorted by the most popular. And then he said he sorted beyond that by most engaged content. And then he took those topics and he's going to start his short video production on that stuff. So he's using marketing research from his own stuff to find what content hits the hardest. This is exactly what Tim Ferriss did when he wrote the 4-Hour Work Week. If you remember that book, he uses medium.com and he blogged every chapter in his book and he saw which one got the most engagement. And those were the chapters that went into his book. Interesting way to write a book, but content, there's a lot of ways to do it. Again, we've listed a couple of things. Let's move on to question number 2. We'll come back to Simon this time. What's the key to creating content that consistently engages and converts followers into customers?
That's a great question. One thing I think is, as a creator, to find that sweet spot where your interest is and what people need right now. That's the hardest thing. It took me probably 30 years to find that sweet spot, right? And sometimes it's easy to find what interests you, and sometimes it's easy to find what they need. And when there is overlap, that's when it works. And the second part is in the beginning. So if you have a small audience, create a pod. find buddies that help you. Everybody has done it this way. The first books of Seth Godin was his 10 buddies promoting it. And then they grew together. Now they are on the cover of each other.
Yeah.
This is how everybody grows. So create a pod. Like we three are a pod right now. And we have expansion teams, 280 people in there. They are pods specifically for LinkedIn. And so I guess you can create these pods for X, for LinkedIn, wherever you need them, or you can even plug into existing pods. Like we run pods, other people run pods. You can plug into existing ones if you don't want to build them.
I love that. So it's basically like forcing engagement through other people of like mind to get exposure for engagement. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, when you start a fire, the very beginning is the hardest, right? When the fire is on, it continues. But in the beginning, that's when you need this help with a little paper and this little support to get the fire started. That's what a pod can be.
I like it. I like it. Neil, what's the key to creating content that consistently engages and converts followers into customers?
Back to, similar to what Simon said, I think obviously this concept of influencer marketing is something that people overlook as well. So if you can buddy up, as Simon said, with people in your niche, in your sort of realm, then obviously you can use their expanded reach to utilize. Maybe they have a bigger social following than you do, so you can promote your brand and product or service that way. Some people may have better authenticity, so influencers, for example, can present your brand or content in a way that feels genuine, increasing sort of trust and engagement. But some of the things that I've found is that there's so many different platforms that you can actually post your content on. And for me, it's better to pick maybe one or two platforms and look at how those platforms and people on them are actually consuming the content. People consume content in different ways. People may like to read a post, for example. People may want to be more visual. People may want to see videos or whatever it might be, some sort of short form vertical content. So for me, I think you have to, first of all, identify and work out which platforms you want to use, and then drive the content associated with those platforms that'll help be more engaging. Not all platforms are the same, and you can't use the same type of content across these multiple platforms because you just simply won't get the engagement. So I guess it depends on the platforms you're used to, platforms that you have a presence on, or if you're starting from scratch, then you have to pick a platform and look at how you can create the content for that specific platform.
What a great answer. Marketing research, right? Like it's such a great example that I have that recently happened to me. Gen Z, right? There was a young person that came into my company, bought our software, membership to our software. And I got on the phone with them and I was like, how'd you buy this? Why did you even buy this? And he said, well, I heard about it through a mastermind. And then I binged your content. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I went to your YouTube channel. And I watched 8 videos and I booked a call from the 8th video. And then I bought right when I got on the call because I was already warmed up and inducted. To me, that's a buying process that I didn't even ever expect. We've never targeted Gen Zs, but now I have this market knowledge of how Gen Zs buy. And so now if I know that, it's like, okay, the average Gen Z guy is going to watch between 5 and 10 videos. What if I built a sequence of videos that work somebody up all the way through the nurture process? That's an interesting way to create some content that can get people to buy. The other thing that I look at when we're talking about how to get somebody to consistently engage or a conversion through our content is there's really kind of 3 pieces. The first thing is we got to have good hooks. We got to have scroll stopping hooks, right? So if we're not writing good hooks, we're not sharing good hooks from our videos, we're not doing that stuff, work on writing hooks. Go read, there's books out there on how to write the world's best hook, right? Go find one of those books and start learning that. The second one is storytelling, right? So you got to have a good hook game. You got to have an amazing storytelling game, right?
Sean,
There's
what
a lot
are your
of
favorite books on hooks? I have one, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, so I go back to the greats of all the copywriting that's in there. So here's the first one. This is Claude Hopkins. If you know this one, it's called Scientific Advertising. He talks about that. I've got another book that was derived around, where is it here? It's the 12-month millionaire, and it's the guy that just started in direct response writing. And all he did is said, I have a list of it's like 160 of the world's best hooks that ever worked to sell the most money ever. And so I'll take one of those topics and I'll just spin it into my own language about whatever concept that I'm talking about. So I don't create my hooks more so than I read them. There's a lot of other ones out there. I mean, all the great copywriters that are out there. So those are, like Gary Halbert writes some of the best. Dan Kennedy writes some of the best. So I just kind of look at all the greats that were in direct response marketing, and those are the people that I find.
What was the second one? The
12-month millionaire. I've got it here.
Millionaire. Cool.
It's a massive. Here, let me show it to you because I was really messing around with like going into direct response copywriting for a while, and I was like,
I'm sure you know this one. I'm reading this one. I really like it. Breakthrough Advertising.
Eugene Schwartz is a G. How much did you pay for that book?
I think something $300, $400.
Yeah. So when I wanted that book, it was $950.
Boom.
I ended up, my wife got it for me for $425. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's on that shelf right there. But this is look at this thing. It's a massive, big old binder called The 12-Month Millionaire. It's written by Vincent James. He was also one of the world's best copywriters. He studied under Gary Halbert. And I think like when it comes to content creation, you got to look at the greats. You got to look at the giants that everybody used to stand on their shoulders of, right? So it's like Gary Halbert, Dan Kennedy, Vincent James, Eugene Schwartz. There's so many of them. Another one's called Great Leads. There's a book called Great Leads written by Michael Masterson. That book really gave me an understanding of the levels of awareness. Because when you're marketing with your content, one of the things that you always want to do is you want to understand what awareness level your prospect has. Because if your prospect has a good awareness level, then you can be shorter in your content. But if they have less awareness level, we have to go more to like curiosity-based storytelling, right? So Great Leads by Michael Masterson is a really, really good book. So those are the first things. So have good hooks. We just talked about hooks. Storytelling, right? Long story short, there's a girl, Margot Lieberman, wrote a book called Long Story Short. That was an easy book to start with storytelling. TEDx storytelling. Pixar has a good book about storytelling. Michael Haug's Journey of Two Heroes' Journeys, good storytelling book. But if you learn how to actually tell a story that engages, which pulls into the next one, is like, how do you get audience connection? You have to be in their mind. You have to walk, their journey, and you have to do it through your stories. And then lastly is the call to action strategies. So hook, story, and offer, to keep it simple. When we're looking at content that consistently engages and converts, if you get good at hooks, stories, and call to actions, or hook, stories, and offers, your content will convert every single time. So those would be my tips for that question. Let's move on to question number 3 now. Simon, coming back to you. How can founders produce high quality content without spending hours doing it every single day?
I learned this from a few guys. One of them was Gary Vaynerchuk, was my absolute inspiration. He said, stop creating content, start documenting what's happening to you.
Interesting.
And so if you are doing stuff, and most of us are doing stuff, right? We are trying out stuff. That is interesting enough. If you just document that, today I'm learning this, today I fucked up building the app by doing this, today I realized, oh my God, I should have done this. There are so many people, maybe you think, oh, that's boring. It is not. There are so many people that are 10 meters behind you, and for them, this is the most valuable information. They don't have the time to read 3 books, but they want to know exactly, okay, which mistakes should I avoid and what's the direct path to building an app, because I'm building my first app. If we stay with this example. So whatever you are doing, don't create content. Don't put that stress on you. You don't have to be the next Hemingway. We have already Hemingway, okay? Relax. We are navigating in a quickly evolving world. Everybody is confused. So if you find a path, and even if you are just exploring the path in a real authentic way and you share that, that can be right now valuable to 100 people. So maybe 2 are in Norway, 4 in America, and 2 are in Dubai. Well, that's enough as an audience for today if it's the right people. So my tip, stop creating content, start building in public whatever you're building, build it in the open. It's much it's much less risky than you think. I'm doing this and nobody's being damaged in any ways. Not even the brand reputation. We are in a generation where you actually increase in status when you're vulnerable, and I think we are ready as a society. And because most people watching you are maybe in the 20s now, if you are on YouTube, for them it's absolutely normal that you fuck up. They are not expecting anything else. They go, oh, this guy's real, let me subscribe.
Yeah,
So
that
build in
is
public.
that is the best tip that I've heard about content creation in a really, really long time. So thanks for that one. That's really powerful. Just document your journey and don't be afraid to do it. I think what's also cool about that is like when you document your journey, other people can watch you fail. This is how you get to that vulnerability piece. And when other people see you fail, what do they think? Oh, well, he failed. That's okay. I could do it too. And then they start doing it. So I think there's that I can do it too mentality when other people fail that you watch do that. And it also drives you to actually be better, or at least compare yourself to somebody. So I think that's an awesome, awesome tip, Simon. Let's go now to Mr. Neil Fairman, who is a maestro with content. How can founders produce high quality content without spending hours every day?
I mean, I love Simon's point, just real quick on that, because I think in my field, people love to see behind the scenes. How do you make your videos? What equipment do you use? How have you set up your lighting and things like that? So people love that behind the scenes. And if you do make mistakes and if things break, if you're on live streams and stuff breaks, people like to see that vulnerability, and it makes you more personable. You're just a person at the end of the day that has problems. But to answer your question, in my workflows, and I'm going to take this podcast as an example now. So we 3 here are doing a live show right now. It's classed as a podcast, but it's a video-based podcast. And in order for us to create maybe additional content without having to spend hours on that, you can use various repurposing workflows that'll help you create multiple clips and parts of content from this one session. So I today could take this video once it's been published up to YouTube and use various AI tools like Opus Clip, for example, or Cast Magic, or even Descript to take this video and let it sort through and find actionable clips that I can repurpose and repost on various social platforms. It could be a very simple snippet, a piece of gold nugget information from Simon or Sean that then can be reused, and I can post that on Instagram, for example. I could post it on X or whatever it might be. I could also take this content, because it's very well spoken audio content, and create a audio-based podcast or an audio-based file that can share with other people. People might not want to be able to watch us on YouTube. They might not be able to even catch us on the replay. People consume content in different ways. So I could even repurpose this podcast now as an audio workflow, as an audio podcast to push out somewhere else so people could consume us in other ways. You could also create something called an audiogram, which is an Instagram audio workflow. It's just a simple snippet of audio with a static video or a static picture on there. So it's like people seeing this on Instagram. It would be a small audio file that they can consume as well. So repurposing is my sort of go-to workflow for being able to create content quickly without having to redo the content or create content myself. Repurpose what you already have, and you'll be able to post that to various different places.
I think that was the best answer that we could always give, right? So it's document your stuff and then build in bulk and then repurpose through that bulk to smaller video format. That's the same stuff I was going to share. Is like when I went through the inner circle with Russell Brunson, he had a whole thing on, in fact, he wrote a book called Traffic Secrets about this idea of building content and how to batch and repurpose. And so what he did was every Thursday, he would open up and just turn on the video recorder, and he would start with a long form piece of content. Typically, he would do exactly what Neil said. He would record like an hour-long podcast. and he would leave the video recording after that hour-long podcast, and then he would film the same exact content for each platform. So he would spend like 5-6 hours recording something live, and then he has this one ginormous piece of content that he did a video podcast. Then he made something for Facebook. Then he made something for Instagram. Then he made something for LinkedIn. Then he made something for Twitter, and so on and so forth. And then he stopped the recording. So he had one big piece of content, and then he just hands off that piece to his team. Now his team could be automation and AI. I think you said opus.clip is one of those techs. Neil, I think it'd be helpful to share those tech. What are the other techs again that you said? Opus Clip, and what was the other one?
So Opus Clip, Descript. You've got Castermagic.io, which is very similar to Opus.
Yeah, so these are good ones for you guys to investigate if you want to do something like this, where you can build a long form piece of content, find one of those softwares and test them. We're not going to recommend one or the other or the next, but there's 3 or 4 that he just shared. And so I think that's interesting. So if you are going to go for the content game, think about, how do I film in bulk? And then how do I chop it up and repurpose? And then find one person or maybe some tech to help you assist with that. And now you have a system, and that's really the end. So great answers from both of these guys here. Thank you for that. Let's move on to our next question. Simon, coming to you. What trends in social media should founders pay attention to right now?
Trends in social media. I like X because it's wild. Now, Neil thinks people are running away from X, but they do so in waves, and they come back in waves too. I think it has legs. I like it because it's so immediate, and there are a few trends going on there. There are pockets that are really, really powerful. Like, for example, I'm a part-time investor, right? I like to manage my own money and to buy stocks. There are other 100 investors that I like discussing thesis with, and they are so smart. They find the holes in my thesis. So I write down, this is why I'm buying Google right now, that the DOJ is attacking it. My thesis. People are too afraid. The fundamentals are strong. I mean, do you know the value of having 100 smart minds? Some of them are coming from MIT, from Wharton. I'm a guy, I'm coming from a public schools in South Europe. I can barely read and calculate without a phone. So I have access to these amazing resources. I don't know if it qualifies as a trend, but I would say we are so blessed, especially if you are in a niche. Like, this is the finance stock picking niche or the investing niche. And probably there are many niches. If you are in science, I think X is wonderful. YouTube is a superpower. In YouTube, you can find, again, MIT professors. There is Asvat Damodaran, who is the guy who teaches valuation at NYU. I could never afford NYU when I was a student, but I can watch his courses right now, and he even shares his blueprints. So I'm not the best with trends, but we have available things that 20 years ago would cost you $60,000, and you had to fly there and to apply for and to hope you get access to, and it's now for free. It's out there. So cancel Netflix, enter MIT, enter NYU. It's there. It's a superpower. Why not using it, right? I'm heavily using it.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Neil, coming to you. The question is, what trends in social media should founders pay attention to right now?
I think, back to your point originally, you've got to first of all find out where your audience is. And Simon said right at the beginning of this scattergun approach isn't the way forward, because you don't necessarily know if your audience is on there. So if there's market research to enable you to find where your audience is, then the specific trend associated with that social media platform is what's going to influence what you do on there. But let's take a couple of examples. So LinkedIn at the moment, which is a platform that I'm sort of heavily pushing from my side, and I like X as well, even though people may be leaving and coming back, as Simon said. LinkedIn is trying to double down on video, and in particular the vertical format video, with captions. I think it's important. And if you think about how people consume this, a lot of people who are on LinkedIn, for example, maybe consuming videos and other topics whilst they're at work. A little bit naughty. Maybe they shouldn't be doing that. But the point is people may be watching that. Now, you can have the volume up or potentially wear any headphones if you're in a business environment. So if you are having captions on your video, i.e. you can actually see these closed captions alongside to and accompany the video, and that is going to give you far more reach because you can read and digest what's going on in the video through these captions. And then couple that with short form vertical video. LinkedIn now has got a new area within their app on LinkedIn specifically designed for short form video or vertical video, where you have the shorts in YouTube, for example, and TikTok and all this kind of stuff. LinkedIn is going down the same route. So people now will be scrolling through videos. And if you come across a video that has captions and is well laid out and is punchy, to your point, Sean, about having a message, whether it's a great story that they're telling, whatever it is, if you have captions on this video, then that is one place where you can really shine, I think, and get an audience that potentially wouldn't be able to consume that if they were in an environment where they had to listen. So captions on videos is a big thing that's been going on over the last sort of 12 months, and it's here to stay and will continue into 2025.
I love that. So staying relevant to the social platforms, the trends that they're doing, I think is a key. The other thing that I think is really a valuable lesson for any founder, there's other people that are selling something that's close to what you're selling. This is called a competitive marketplace. It happens everywhere. Like, get used to it. It's okay. Competition is a healthy thing. If you're the only person selling the thing that you sell, be a little bit concerned, simply because we don't know if there's a market for that. When you have multiple competitors, typically 2 to 4, that means there's a market that makes sense. What I encourage you to do, because there's probably somebody in your marketplace that's been selling to the same audience that you're trying to or working to sell to, go to their stuff and look at the ones that are the most viewed, the most trending, the most engaged with content. Write down the titles, the headlines, watch that video, consume it somehow, turn it into your own voice with the similar topic, and start testing on that material. This is going to be the fastest shortcut to getting something that actually performs. Specifically, if, as an example, Frank Kern, dear friend of mine, client of mine in our software. He's one of the OG marketers of all times when it comes to direct response marketing, whether it be in mail or online or whatever. And one of the things that he has been doing for a very long time is publishing certain types of content. Right now, he's focused on DMs, which is perfect because that's what our tech runs with, right? Like, we are the category kings in personal DMs. And so he's been doing a lot of content about DMs. And so I went to his content and I looked down and I saw which are the highest performing videos. I took those titles, I redressed the titles, I added my own story with my own call to action, and I published that content. Guess what? It smashes, right? So this is a way you can have kind of like a cheat code to go and look at what should I be paying attention to right now? What should I be publishing about right now? And then if you have a second set of eyes, like a Simon or a Neil, to look at your content and say, oh man, you shouldn't have said this, or maybe change this, or tweak this, or that headline's wrong, or that story doesn't fit, or this call to action needs to be addressed, right? When you have that type of feedback, all you can do is get better and better and better, right? If you do play on Facebook, there is a Chrome extension called Clio. If it's Kleo, or maybe it works. Actually, it might be on LinkedIn. But Clio, what it does is when you go to a competitor, you can use the extension to figure out what is this most viewed, most engaged content on the platform, or hers, right? So Clio's a good one. Okay, let's move on to our last question before we dive into our lightning round question. Coming over, Simon, if you could recommend only one type of content for founders to focus on to create, what would it be and why?
One type of content, I would say, I can share my process. Every Monday morning, 2 hours is my content creation block. And the only type of content that I create is what is interesting for me right now. What am I learning? What am I exploring? What am I wondering about? This is how I start. And then while I'm writing, I also think about what do they need right now? Which questions did I got last week in the comments, last week in the community, last week via emails? And now this thing starts to click together. What I am interested about and the questions that I received over the last days. This is the 2 hours of content that I create. Then I hand it over to Michelle and Lou, and they chop it up, and it becomes an article, a podcast, and all these different things, social media posts. And then it goes into the refinery, which is this machine, right, that reprocesses them. But type of content, I have only 2 questions. What is interesting for me right now? What did they ask for over the last days? And then I try to find this ikigai in between, right? That intersection. That's my process.
I love it. That's an awesome process. Neil, over to you. If you could recommend only one type of content for founders to focus on, what would it be and why?
I would stick with the short form vertical content if you can. If you can repurpose what you already have, as I mentioned before, doing something with captions. I think we are in a world where, unfortunately, a lot of people don't have a lot of time in their hands and the attention span is very short. So in order to capture people's attention quickly, having the hook, having a good visual, and having something short in that vertical format is what I would recommend. That's what I do as well. I do my social posting and workflows actually on a Sunday. So I'll go through some of the videos I've created either for other people as well, and I'll help chop those up, create that short form content, and use a social post scheduler, which we haven't spoke about, to actually post those over different times throughout the working week. So I'm not having to actually go and post those things myself on the Sunday. I will schedule them using something either called Buffer, Hootsuite, Later. There's lots of software that does that for you. And these can be written formatted posts, video posts, whatever it might be, onto multiple social channels where I know that my audience is going to be. So that's my typical workflow. It'll be video, short form content. I'll schedule it using software, and that means I've got all my social posts that I want to sort of promote, try and get some call to actions and engage people and educate them over that week. And then I will go on those social platforms during the week to either engage and communicate with the people that have interacted and do the same process the next Sunday. So that's typically my workflow.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. So what I would just say is where you like to write is, or how you like to publish is how you should publish, right? If you like to write, write. If you like to film video, right? Okay. Let's move into the lightning round here. The last question of the day. How do you measure the success of social media content beyond just likes and views, Simon?
So after this, my calendar says Insights Teplio. So what I do is I go to this software called Teplio, I click Insights, and it shows me the stats. It shows me what's winning. That's based on engagement, click rate. And so that's the first part. The second part is every Friday, Michelle puts together the sprint dashboard. And in the sprint dashboard, it says number of new subscribers to the email list, number of new discovery calls that came from this channel, So new discovery calls from YouTube, discovery calls from LinkedIn, discovery calls from cold calls. Those are the 2 loops that I measure. The first one is engagement. The second one is conversion. That's our process. How do you do it, Neil?
It's very similar. So I'll take a look at all the analytics that I've got available to me. And I know we talked about before what tools are available to us. Not all social platforms have analytics. So my main platform of choice that I work on is YouTube. So I'm going to see how my videos are performed by using the analytics, audience retention, click-through rates, where are people finding my videos is a big thing, because if I don't understand where people are finding the videos, then where am I supposed to post them and so on? Because not everybody is going to find the videos on YouTube. It could be through another platform that I've posted and so on. So analytics is key because people do focus too much on the vanity metrics like likes and views rather than tracking, the content that drives the engagements and leads. How many leads or how many how is that converted basically? So when I've posted something, as you mentioned, Simon, what is my conversion rate to that? Has it generated business for me, or at least got me a series of emails that I can then use, or email addresses that I can then use to go and post and do other things? So analytics is the key for working out where and how effective your social media marketing is.
I was struggling so long with analytics. The only thing that would give me proper analytics was YouTube, but our channel is not big enough to use all these analytics. So I hope we will get at some point to that level on YouTube. So far, I was struggling. For example, audio podcast. Apple Podcast doesn't give me any knowledge about which topics do my people like. Are they listening more or less? Where do they stop? Do they stop in between, or do they listen to the whole thing? I don't know. And right now, maybe next week, I can show a little bit of progress, because right now we're consolidating everything into Kajabi, because Kajabi does tags and analytics. So the podcast, the articles, the blog, everything will be in one place. Maybe in 7 days, I know a little bit more. But I think it's not that easy to get, except YouTube. It's actually pretty hard to get data. Now I have only Taplio that's working, and maybe Kajabi that will be working. Curious about how do you do it, guys? Sean?
Yeah, I would just say I measure the success of my social media content the same way Neil does, is by how many clients buy based on what I'm selling. And so like the only metric that I really ever only care about is revenue. Like, what's the return on the investment of my time, energy, and money and team that I'm putting into my content, and is the content producing more ROI than I'm putting into it? And remember, I'm not like one of those guys that's kind of hey, I just want to test this one thing, or only got to make one piece of content. If it goes viral, then it's winning. No. I understand. Look, I've studied communication for 30 years. I have a specialty and an expertise that I need to get out to the world. And so I'm not going to stop producing content. But what I am going to do is I'm going to look at how I produce it and make sure that it's producing the biggest returns possible. So that's the split test. That's the stuff that I study and look for. And if it's not working, then I change my game. Like, I'm very quick to change if the results aren't coming. And so that's kind of how I measure it beyond likes and views. There's one other question I thought of in a lightning round here that I think, and we'll give 30 seconds to each person here to answer this one, because this will end the show for us today before next. Don't forget, next week, we're going to dive into goal setting. So founders, if you're like, how do I goal set for 25? Come next week, because we'll share exactly how to do that. By the way, if you have a big takeaway from today's show, drop it in a comment below. Make sure and smash that like button and share this out to somebody who actually needs to see this. But the last question of the day is this. Simon, what's your advice for founders who feel too camera shy or too overwhelmed to start producing content?
I was overwhelmed looking at this camera. You are talking to this black hole, and you don't know who you are talking to. You don't know if anybody is on the other side, and you don't see you don't see their expression. So it is terrible in the beginning. I had a coach, and she gave me this, which was super helpful. She said, look through the camera and imagine you're talking to the real person, and imagine that real person that you're talking to. In this case, I was imagining a mix of my ideal client, so this actual current client that I was talking to. And sometimes I was imagining I'm talking to my kids, because when I talk to my kids, I am much more kind and patient. And so it was a mix. I was looking at the ideal client and talking to them, like I would talk to them in a room. And sometimes I would imagine that I'm talking to my kids, because when I'm too stiff, in the first year, I was very, very stiff. And so I would open up the heart by talking to my kids. I talk different to my kids. So there's more heart in there. So I was trying to be less rigid and more open by imagining the kids. So that was the process that she gave me, and it really helped.
Perfect. I love that. So it's kind of like that when you're the audience When you're speaking on stage, try to imagine people naked. When you're speaking on video with audio like this, try to look through the camera and speak to an actual person on behind the other side of the screen, which is awesome. So, Neil, same question to you. Ending our lightning round here. What's your advice for founders who feel too shy or too camera shy or too overwhelmed to start producing content?
Similar thing to Simon. I've got another one as well. So talk to camera as if you were talking to a friend. Practice. Just hold up the phone. You've got a camera on your phone, just record, and just look at yourself and see how well you're doing as well. That's one thing to get over that camera shy. Seeing yourself on camera is the worst thing in the world when you're just first starting off. So you can do it in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to be live. You don't have to go live in front of everybody else. You can use your phone for that. Another thing that I have helped people with is just get a Post-it note with a smiley face. Pop it on the end of the camera lens. Then it looks like you're actually talking to a person. You're not going to get the feedback, obviously, but again, a little Post-it note with a smiley face goes a long way. And if you really don't want to be on camera, then what's stopping you doing a nice voiceover and creating a video using all the available B-roll that's available out there? There's a lot of very successful faceless YouTube channels that do really well. All you hear is the person's voice, and they do lots of B-roll and different sort of graphics and so on to keep people entertained. You don't necessarily have to be on camera. So maybe think outside the box. And if you really don't want to be on camera, do something like that.
Great tips. I hope everybody listening to this took notes on that. And the last thing that I would share is not so much like a tactic or a practical thing that you can do, but it's a mindset, right? If you're not convicted about the thing that you're wanting to produce content about, go get convicted. Sean, how do you get conviction on the thing that I'm trying to do? Take out a piece of paper and write down all the reasons why you're not 100% sold, why you wouldn't buy it yourself, why you wouldn't want to tell it to somebody else. Write down those reasons and then sell yourself on that. And if you can't, go to your coach and say, here's the reasons I'm not convicted. I need help. Can you convict me about my own product? Get conviction about your own product and then be happy to share that knowledge. Look, there's somebody that was 1 year behind you, 5 years behind you, 10 years behind you that needs the stuff that you're doing today. It's important, it's valuable, and it provides a tremendous amount of opportunity for those who haven't reached the level that you're on right now. Everyone's on a journey. Everyone's a couple of steps ahead or behind. Remember, we want to market to those people that are 2 to 10 years behind us in our journeys. And because we've already walked the path, we should have full conviction, full confidence, and share tips that help people along in their journey. Then it becomes really easy because it's easy to share something that's worked for you. And so that's it. Now, if you don't have anything that's ever worked for you, you still have confidence about a certain topic, like start there. And do exactly what Simon said, do exactly what Neil said, but just hit that play button and start moving forward, because I promise you, you will build a following, and followings come and clients come there shortly after. So with that said, that's going to wrap up our episode for today. And as we go into the night, remember, next week, we are going to go after goal setting. And so with that said, guys, thank you so much for being here at the Elevate podcast, where we help founders reach the next level. And we can't wait to see you same time, same channel next week.
It's goal setting party. See you next week. Bye-bye.